Hi, this is Adam James from Majority60.com, and you're listening to U.S. Senate candidate James Mackler on Two Broads Talking Politics.
Are you listening?
Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Broads Talking Politics. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sophie, and I'm here with your other co-host, Kelly. Hey Kelly.
Hey Sophie.
And joining us today is James Mackler. He is a candidate for U.S. Senate from Tennessee. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, Sophie. Thank you, Kelly. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. Can you just sort of start off by telling us how you came to be running for Senate from Tennessee?
I'm happy to. Frankly, our friends and neighbors all across Tennessee are really hurting. We already had more rural hospitals closing per person in Tennessee than any other state in the nation, and we just lost another rural hospital in Salina. The opioid epidemic is ravaging our communities, and there's no solution. People aren't even talking about it on a national level. And the trade war is hurting our economy, and continued economic uncertainty only makes matters worse. Those were all issues in the 2018 election, and now voters can see that the people they elected, frankly, can't or won't address the problems.
So you ran briefly in the 2018 election when there was an open Senate seat from Tennessee, and then you ended up stepping out of that race, and now you're running again. Why did you make the decision to run again this time around?
I did. So a little background would probably help here. I was a 30-year-old attorney when our country was attacked on 9/11. And I felt at the time the way I think my grandfather's generation felt after Pearl Harbor. I felt the need to step up and serve in a time of crisis. So I shut down my law practice. I had to get an age waiver because I was 30 years old, but I received a waiver from the Army, learned to fly helicopters, joined the 101st Airborne Division, and deployed to Iraq in 2005, 2006. I was later a JAG prosecuting military sexual assaults before eventually returning to private practice after 10 years of active duty. I still serve in the Air National Guard. I had stepped forward after 9/11 because I felt the need to serve, and I stepped forward in 2017 for the same reason. I just had to do more. I ran for about 6 months against Senator Corker, eventually, as you mentioned, got out to support Governor Bredesen, but I still feel that same calling. And I believe, as I mentioned, that the problems we had before are only getting worse.
So we don't yet know who the Republican in this race will be. This is once again going to be an open seat. So what do you think the people of Tennessee are going to be looking for as they're electing someone to the U.S. Senate? You know, there's Tennessee is sort of thought of as a pretty red state now in terms of congressional representation, Senate representation, but you're running as a Democrat. You know, what do you think people are looking for? What are the kinds of things they're thinking about as they're making their decision about who to elect to the Senate?
Well, there's a lot to that question. I mean, there's chaos in Washington, D.C. right now, and any Republican who I run against is going to be a blank check for Mitch McConnell to continue policies that, frankly, ignore the pressing issues in Tennessee, continue to confirm extreme judges or block reasonable judges if we have a Democratic president in 2020. When I travel the state, what I find is that the thing that's broken in underserved communities, both rural and urban, is the brand of politician. And I'm not a politician. I'm an outsider. I'm a veteran. I'm a man of faith. And I'm in this race early to meet people where they are and listen to what they need from Washington. And that's something they're just not getting right now.
You had talked earlier about how many rural communities in Tennessee are hurting from the trade wars. And I know that I'm in Wisconsin, and we also have a lot of farmers hurting from the trade wars, but specifically we have dairy farmers. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit specifically about how the trade wars are hurting people in Tennessee.
Yeah, of course. We have a large soybean industry that's being hurt badly. Soybean exports to China are an important part of our economy. We also have a very large auto industry in Tennessee that folks sometimes forget about. and that industry is being hurt as well.
You have some big endorsements already. Former Governor Phil Bredesen and Senator Tim Kaine have both endorsed you. Can you talk a little bit about what endorsements like that mean and what you're looking for in terms of showing people that really ready to sort of take on this big role?
Well, I'm really proud to have those endorsements that you mentioned. Governor Bredesen has perhaps the best track record of solving problems in Tennessee, and his friendship and his support mean a lot to me. I found that folks across Tennessee really respond to my track record of service and of sacrifice, and we are building a team and raising the money to make sure that story is told. And having endorsements like the one you mentioned help us to build that team, help us to raise the money, and help us to make sure that the message gets out.
In the last Senate campaign in Tennessee, Phil Bredesen came very closer than I think people expected to winning that race, but he still fell short to Marsha Blackburn. What do you think is the secret to a Democrat winning the race in Tennessee?
Well, I'm not sure there's a secret to it, but Governor Bredesen got 44%, as you mentioned. I only need 6 points more in a presidential year with all of the additional voter turnout we can expect, all of the additional excitement that we can expect. And I'm the right person to build off of the race that Governor Bredesen ran as an outsider, a veteran, and a man of faith. And that's, again, why I'm in this so early, is 6 points is entirely within reach, particularly in the time we're living in.
You have a couple of young daughters, and, we have a lot of listeners who have kids. We have kids ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about what having kids does to sort of your political perspective, your reasons for being in the race, and the kinds of issues that you care about?
I'm so glad you asked about my kids. My girls are 8 and 7. They're just 13 months apart. My wife is a rabbi here in town, and so as a member of the clergy, she teaches me every day what it means to really serve a community. And we've tried very hard to raise our children in line with our faith and our moral values and to raise them to be good citizens. And this is an opportunity by running for me to show them what it means to have civil conversations about important issues and to disagree on policy, but to be respectful of other people's views. And they've learned those lessons. One thing that really touched me was when I decided to get out of the race to endorse Governor Bredesen, I sat down with my kids and my wife to talk about it. And my older daughter, who was 8 at the time, started crying when I told her I was getting out. And I asked her why she was crying. It wasn't because she was sad that I wasn't going to be a senator or that I wasn't going to be going to D.C. What she wanted to know was, what about all the people who believed in you, who were going to vote for you? So she was already learning these lessons, that it's not about me. It's about servant leadership. It's about the people around us. That meant a lot. And they're, more than anything, the reason I'm running. I'm going to raise my children in this state and in this country, and I want to raise them in a country that we can be proud of.
Speaking of those people who believe in you, I'm wondering if you could tell me, does anything surprise you when you're going around and talking to potential voters, telling them about your story and your position on the issues? Is there anything that you hear about that you didn't expect to hear about, or any reactions that surprise you?
I'm consistently surprised by how civil people are. If all of your political engagement is on Facebook or watching cable news, you would think that we're all at each other's throats and have nothing in common. And that's just not the case. Every single person I speak to, even if we disagree strongly, we have thoughtful, intelligent, civil, polite discussions time and time again. I think it's important for us all to remember that we're not that far apart, that we're all on the same team. We essentially want the same things, and we need to be willing to work together to accomplish those goals. And I have those conversations almost every day that remind me of, again, how much we have in common in this country.
Tennessee has been facing some challenges of leadership within the state legislature this year. How are the people of Tennessee feeling about government right now and the way government is or is not working?
Oh, they're frustrated. The people of Tennessee are tired of politicians. They're tired of people who appear to be looking out only for themselves and finding their next way to take another step up the political ladder. They want reform, both on the state and federal level. They want an outsider. To give you an example, something I talk about a lot is the need for campaign finance reform. Our political culture is fundamentally broken by the role of corporate money right now, and in particular, dark money. I'm not taking corporate PAC money, and one of the first initiatives I intend to work on is campaign finance reform, because our individual voices are being drowned out by floods of corporate cash right now. And that only maintains the status quo, and it prevents us from having serious discussions about healthcare, education, jobs. Those are the things people want to talk about, both at the state and federal level.
I know education is a big issue in Tennessee right now, especially with, I think recently the governor signed in a bill to have a limited school voucher program. Can you talk a little bit about education in Tennessee and what you'd like to do as a senator to improve it?
I went to public school. My mom taught public school for 40 years. I think robust public education is one of the best pathways to opportunity in this country. We need an informed electorate to have a strong democracy. I'm troubled by the voucher program. And on a federal level, I'm deeply troubled that we have a Secretary of Education who doesn't seem to believe in public education and, frankly, doesn't seem to understand education. We need to win elections because we need to have people in Washington who understand that public education is a priority. Just to give one example, there are tremendous disparities in Tennessee and across the country in discipline for minority children in public education. Children of color are expelled, suspended, arrested in elementary schools at a disproportionate rate. The Obama administration had put policies in place to prevent that, and the Trump administration has removed those policies. And that's one small example, but it's important. And we need to be doing a lot more to support public education and equality in public education.
So, like all parts of the world, Tennessee is being affected by climate change. Chattanooga is the sixth fastest warming city in the U.S., according to recent estimates. So, what are your thoughts on climate change and what people what Congress needs to do to address climate change and make sure that we really move on this quickly?
It's climate change deniers that are saying that we can't create jobs and protect the environment. It's a false choice. We can do both. Here in Tennessee, Oak Ridge National Labs is leading the way in research on renewables and improved energy efficiency, creating jobs and growing our economy. We absolutely have the ingenuity and the capacity to tackle these big problems, but we can't begin doing so when an entire political party is denying the existence of the problem.
We're seeing more and more veterans get involved in politics and especially get involved in democratic politics. Can you talk a little bit about your background as a veteran and how that sort of leads you into public service and politics and what you think that means in terms of, how you view the threats around the world and what the U.S. should be doing?
Well, in some ways that ties in with your previous question. The Department of Defense calls climate change one of the greatest threats to national security, and they're right about that. There's no question in my mind. My service plays such a pivotal role in my entire belief system in so many ways. It's almost hard to think about where to begin. The reason I stepped forward to serve is because I believe that we all need to have a stake in our country, that democracy takes work, and I felt that we were in a time of crisis, which is why I joined the military. I look at, just as an example, the president undercutting our diplomatic efforts. Our allies don't know where we stand right now. They don't know whether or not they can trust the United States to stand by their side as we fight our common enemies. I know from my time in service that diplomacy helps to prevent conflicts before they escalate, that diplomacy saves American lives, it saves us money, and yet the administration again and again defunds diplomatic efforts, ignores our allies, tries to tackle difficult international problems alone. And when we do that, we really create a vacuum internationally that's filled by countries that don't share our values, such as China and Russia. It concerns me greatly.
James, are there things that you would like to make sure that we talk about today?
I think it's important that we talk a little bit more about the need for campaign finance reform. Mm-hmm. I feel that there are so many important issues, education, the environment, the economy, healthcare, that have to be addressed and that we have a lot of common ground on that could be addressed and are being ignored because of the role of corporate money and the lack of of campaign finance reform. I think that should be a top priority for anyone running for the Senate.
What are some of the things you would like to see done for campaign finance reform? Do you have thoughts on what, a good reform might look like?
Yeah, I think a very important first step is to increase transparency. If voters know who's funding, negative or false advertising, then at least there's some accountability on the part of the corporations funding those negative ads or the social media campaigns, whatever it might be. Right now, there's no accountability whatsoever. If a big corporation chooses to put out negative advertising or false advertising against a candidate, we don't even know who it is. And so we don't know who's buying and selling our politicians. And that's not good for democracy. So transparency is something we can address fairly quickly at a legislative level, and it's something I want to address right away.
Do you have the sense that you'll be able to work bipartisanly? Congress seems so divided right now that, I know you said the American public and perhaps the people of Tennessee are not so divided, but within Congress, there's such a deep divide and such an unwillingness, at least among the part of Republicans, to work together. Do you think there are ways to bridge that?
Well, there are some things that we agree on. I think infrastructure is a good example of where we should be able to find some common ground. Unfortunately, the president recently said he won't even discuss that as long as there are investigations going on. But I would say that one thing I've found is that when I listen to elected officials who are themselves veterans, there's a lot of agreement, at least about the idea for mission accomplishment, that we need to work together to reach these goals. And so something I hope to do with an increasing number of veterans being elected is find common ground across the aisle with folks who have a history of military service and begin that process of working with them to achieve our common goals. I think that's within reach. I also believe very strongly that just because we can't solve a problem doesn't relieve us of the obligation to at least begin taking the steps to solve it. So no, I'm not going to change the entire culture in Washington. I don't expect that I can, but I still feel this obligation to get there and to do what I can to begin making the change.
If people want to help out with your campaign, how can they do that?
The best thing they can do is go to jamesmackler.com. That's jamesmackler.com. Sign up for the campaign. Join the team. Contribute what you can. Share things about the campaign on social media. We can win this if everybody wanting change joins the team to make it happen.
Excellent. And do you recommend axe throwing for date night?
I guess it depends on who your date is. It went well for us. So yes, I recommend it. It's a good trust building exercise. Excellent.
If listeners are completely confused what I'm talking about, they should go to your Facebook page and see a little video of you axe throwing.
Exactly. My wife was much better at it than I am, which is not surprising.
All right. Well, James, thank you so much for talking to us today. We will put links to your website and your social media up on our website so people can see that video of you axe throwing and can also join your campaign and donate to your campaign. But thank you so much.
Thank you. And just want to remind your listeners, we've got a great video on the website that they should take a look at. It's just a minute and a half long, and that's jamesmackler.com to check it out.
All right. Excellent. And I'm super excited to have a competitive Senate race in Tennessee.
Thank you so much. It's going to be a good race, and I appreciate your time and attention and helping us get the word out. Thanks again, Kelly. Thanks, Sophie. Talk to you later.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Wethlin and was created for use by this podcast.